Here with the amazing, the phenomenal, our queen of this month, Miss Dana Wilson. Dana, welcome.
Thank you. That's such an introduction. Now I have a lot to follow up that.
No, you deserve it. Frankly, I think every woman deserves to be introduced that way. But you especially, congratulations. We're super excited to be highlighting you and featuring you, learning more about you, talking to you. So why don't we start off and tell us what you do, what your firm is. Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here. So I'm so excited that you're doing this. I feel like every woman should be walking out to her own theme music for 2020. That should just hands down be a thing. So my name is Dana Wilson, and I currently run a company called CHIP. We are a fintech company, and that stands for Changing How Individuals Prosper. And what we do is we make it easy to find Black and Latinx financial professionals, and that ranges from investment management, insurance, taxation, estate planning, you name it. We really have the professionals on our platform that can help everyone out. So it's really exciting to just have that come to fruition. I've been in the financial industry for over 15 years, started in banking, insurance, and migrated over to wealth management. And, was always kind of the only woman in a lot of spaces, and a lot of times the only woman of color. So it was time to really put something out into the world that I felt like would be very impactful and meaningful into the financial industry. So looking forward to kind of just diving in and talking more about all things that matter.
Yeah, like there's brown and Black people in our industry. What? Like you've created a company that helps brown and Black people in our industry? What?
I know. It's like who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew? And it's crazy to have, to come into 2020, to have been in the industry for this long, and we still, to some degree, are having a lot of the same conversations that we had years ago. I mean, even prior, to myself being in the industry. I mean, people who have been in for 30 or 40 years, it's just like, yeah, we do exist, and we're not unicorns, and this is not, something new, right? It's not a nuance. It's just about ensuring and providing space, which is what we all kind of want, is that visibility, that empowerment, that access, and that opportunity to just be successful.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I'd love to know more about kind of some of the more personal experiences you had that created this feeling inside of you that you needed to take this next step in creating CHIP and creating these opportunities for people that look like me and you. So I feel like, and tell me if I'm wrong or you feel differently. I feel like a lot of times when we want to make this kind of change, or we want to force an industry to kind of look a little different or be more open and accepting, a lot of that comes from a very emotional and personal space.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we all share in different experiences, right? And sometimes we hold our experiences tight, or we kind of just let our experiences just run wild and kind of go into the world and do something about it. And I think a lot of people have just been doing that by staying in the industry, because it's not easy in general, but then it's definitely not easy sometimes when you're a person of color and you're trying to find your way. And when I graduated from college in 2006 and I went right into banking, I think there was always just some intentionality about being in the bank environment where there was a little bit more inclusion, a little bit more diversity, at least within the bank branch. Mm-hmm. Once I stepped out of that, it was just kind of like, okay, well, where is everyone? Where are all the women? Where are the people that look like me? And as an early 20-something, and I went to an HBCU, and I also grew up in a very diverse town in Montclair, New Jersey. So it was like walking in those spaces, I could have really, been around anyone and really felt comfortable. But when you graduate from an HBCU, you have this really impactful sense of pride and being around a lot of people that look like you, and having that ingrained in you, and that empowerment type of space. And then you walk into an environment where there's no one that looks like you, and you're trying to find your way and trying to find those who will support you and be champions for you. And you kind of have to collect those people along the way. and not seeing anyone in that space, especially in the private wealth, was, definitely tough. To just trying to kind of figure out, is this something that I can be successful in? Is this a space where I'm going to see eventually at some point see more women or see more people of color? And even when I had kind of taken more of a back office role and I was working for a sales and operations manager and helping them manage a team of about 30 advisors, there was not one person of color. And I want to say there was maybe one woman on the entire team. And it's just like, you think about that, it's just crazy. So to continue down that road and really see that time and time again, going through different companies, large firms, mid-size, and then moving into the independent space where it's even more siloed because you're not necessarily in a larger building where maybe you'll run into some people for water cooler chat that might be in other departments that look like you. You're kind of just off to the side, and you really have to do a better job of trying to find individuals and find support, because it's just not coming at you how it comes together for a lot of your other colleagues, and you kind of just get lost. And then you go through your career as much as I did, where you just kind of get numb to it, and you can just get used to not seeing people who look like you. And when you do, it's just at that unicorn moment when you're at a conference and you're pointing over to each other, well, your eyes kind of connect and you're just like, oh my goodness, okay, there is someone here. And you kind of do that thing that we do where we go and connect at the back table, and that happens. And it's crazy to think that we're, light years ahead of where I was when I started the industry, but it's still the same. Like, you can still go to conferences and still be the only, you can still have panels around D&I and inclusion and not have a person of color on that stage, let alone sometimes a woman of any nationality on that stage. And it's disheartening. And it's kind of like, well, how do I know I can succeed if I don't see it? I mean, we've gotten cliche with representation matters, but it really does. I mean, it really makes a world of difference being able to look across the room and seeing someone that looks like you have success, and not just have success, but you watch them be supported through all of that. And that's really, why I felt CHIP needed to exist in the world, so that people don't leave the industry. A lot of people of color have negative experiences and then they leave. And that's not something I feel like we can afford in a lot of our communities. So it's important that they stay, they're retained, they're supported, and they're given that opportunity.
So when you're talking to these professionals, these people of color that you're supporting through CHIP, I mean, what are some of the common things you're hearing? How are these folks feeling? What are some of the kind of things that they're experiencing that really forces them? I mean, it takes a lot of work. A lot of these people have college degrees. They've gotten, a designation like a CFP. There's been a lot of time, money, and energy spent in getting to a, particular place in their career. What are some of the things you're hearing from them that force them to consider leaving this industry, that make them feel so alone? Or it almost sounds like, maybe some of your experience, that to a certain degree, it feels like you've been abandoned.
Yeah. And I mean, that's almost an interesting way to look at it to some degree. And I know, everyone has different experiences, but abandoned might kind of fit into it very well. We're always being included or they want us to get into the door, and it's all about hiring. And that process is a lot of work. It's a lot of work to get to the table and to study for your licenses. And especially when you go out and you dig deeper into certifications and designations, and you have all the pedigree and the credibility to be there, and the experiences through the roof. But then you walk in the door and there's no instruction manual. Yeah. There's no empathy. There's no real understanding of how you want to maybe build your book a little bit differently, or it might take you a little bit longer to hit a lot of these very intense goals, because maybe you don't have the network that your counterparts have, right? And some of us do, but the majority of us don't. So it's harder to hit those goals, or it might take just a little bit more time. But I feel like there's just sometimes not enough grace there that's being given, and there's a lot of conversations that need to happen. So we're just kind of left out trying to figure everything out, right? We're trying to figure out how to almost win the support of our team, of our colleagues. So maybe we get picked up on a team. So we're just putting ourselves ahead for success. And then if we're not, it's just kind of like head down, trying to figure it all out. How do we build a business? How do we build relationships with those that are around us that don't really make us feel welcome, who are inviting us necessarily to the table or to these lunch meetings or into the office to see how things are going, in kind of a more how can we help, and really sitting down and helping us devise a plan where they're actually listening, and hoping that, hey, let's I want to keep you around. I want you to stay here. I want you to feel comfortable. And I just don't know if enough of those conversations are going on. But for a lot of people who are still entering the industry that I talk to, it doesn't seem like those conversations are happening. It's kind of just, they're in the door, and then it's just kind of what happens next. There really isn't a next step, right? We're talking a lot about inclusion, but the next part of that is really the support. So it's hard to hear that people who are starting in the industry in 2020 are still having the same problems or challenges that I had going in 2006. And probably, going further back from that, people who entered the industry in like the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, right? I mean, you would think we would have come a lot farther than that, but unfortunately, not too far.
Yeah, it starts sounding like a lot of these firms are just paying lip service to this whole idea of diversity and inclusion by keeping track of their hiring numbers. But yeah, I mean, it's like, you come in as a introductory position or a lower level position. You're looking for that mentorship. You're looking to connect with someone who's maybe a few years ahead of you or a few rungs further up the ladder. And I think that's where a lot of businesses turn up short, is you've had this initiative in your diversity and hiring, but where's the diversity as we work up the rungs of the ladder? Where's the diversity going all the way up to senior management and executive positions?
Yeah.
And where is that camaraderie and mentorship between people of color and women who can support then the diverse new employees coming into the business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of it is just coming in the door and having that network already set up for you. You walk in and hear someone who looks like you from that senior level, but the problem is that we need more of us in that senior level, right? It's like everything kind of feeds into one another. And not that you have to be paired with a person of color to be successful, but I think that there is something there when you see someone who just kind of walks in the door and understands your story, right? Understands a little bit about your life and really wants to see you get to where they are or surpass them, right? There's really something amazing about that. And being able to walk in the door and that, hey, here's a coach, and I'm going to reach down and make sure that you meet these people who I think will be an integral part of your team, right? Part of your onboarding. And that should really just be standard, right? Where we're kind of walking in the door and we feel ready and equipped, not just from perspective of being able to reach out to clients, but also just knowing that we have a team behind us, because there's a lot of bad days you have when you're building your business, and then you have to figure out whether or not people want you there, right? If that's always in the back of your mind, and then it just gets to a point where, why am I trying so hard to fit in, to be here, when people clearly don't really want me to succeed? And I am a big champion for a lot of the larger banks and the firms that I see taking the initiative and actually not just putting lip service behind it, but really putting in programming to do that, and to ensure that when someone comes in, it's not just another, check mark. They're really building in these programs to hug and put their arms around someone and let them know that, hey, we want you here. We want you to be successful. And these are all the things that we're doing and going to put in place the minute you sign your documents and you come on board. So, we're getting there, right? It's like the conversation we're trying to hopefully have Chip really just propel it right into more action, and also just making sure that people can't say that, hey, there's a pipeline problem, right? There is no pipeline problem. You're looking at least at two women of color here who have had success in the industry, and obviously in our platform we have at least about over 100 professionals there. So when people say that we don't know where to find Black and brown talent, I just can't believe in those statements. I don't believe in those statements.
No, I agree. I completely agree with you, because I think it's one of those things where there is this kind of, there aren't enough people of color, enough women in the industry for us to recruit from. But it's like, but let's take it back, right? Let's look at from elementary school age what young girls are pushed towards and what young boys are pushed towards in terms of careers or areas of focus. How we want to see more girls in science, technology, and math oriented fields. It's something we see now in the middle of the pandemic, where a lot of women have left the industry because they've got kids at home. They're the primary caregiver. They're responsible for all this fun remote learning that's happening in our homes. Can't wait for schools to open. So we have, it's, at least with women, just women generally, we're seeing them leave the industry. You're seeing a lot of the women that, make up they're the majority of nurses, which are heavily affected by the pandemic, right? So you're seeing this gender-based disparity. And it starts from the beginning. It starts from elementary school. If you want more people of color, you want more women in the industry, then you need to start creating that, that idea in a young girl's mind, that this is an area that they can go into. And then they need to see women in banks and executive positions, not just as tellers or administrative or clerical workers. Mm-hmm. They need to see, women leading different companies and being on boards and being an integral part of wealth management companies, broker dealers, RAs, banks, insurance companies. They need to see that to say, like, yeah, this is something I can imagine myself doing and having an interest. So for me, it's not even just the issues with once we get women and people of color into the industry, it's what are we doing to show girls and minorities that this is something that you can actually do. This is a legitimate field of study that you should consider. And then fostering that curiosity and that imagination. And then, once they're in the industry, then creating a network of mentorship and coaching and helping them, rise up through the industry.
It's so important.
Let's go ahead and call it out. There are going to be people who say, well, I didn't get that. Mm-hmm. Why should we do this for you guys? When we haven't done it for these people. So what do you say? What do you say to these people who think that we put too much attention on diversity and inclusion? We to put too much focus on mentoring what I call the others, right? The non-stereotypical white male in our industry. What do you say to those people?
Ooh, that's a big one. And even before that, I just think, this might even really help answer that question too, because I think that every time I look at what we're building at CHIP, I always think about that iconic photo of the little black boy that was in Barack Obama's office, that he bent down to feel his hair and realize that his hair felt like his. Mm-hmm. And that picture alone says so much, and it speaks volumes to every reason why it's so important and why representation matters, even just to be able to feel it, right? Not even believing that, hey, obviously he's a black man that looks like you, but let me just check because I need to touch his hair. I need to feel it to make sure it's real. And, to a lot of those people, it's really just going back in history, right? It's not having to sit here and really talk a lot about what's going on now. It's about unpacking all of the things that have led us to this point of having to have these platforms. And CHIP is really no different at its core to other platforms that exist that support Black-owned businesses, or that support Black-owned restaurants specifically, or Latinx restaurants, or in the list kind of goes on. Because in a perfect world, these platforms wouldn't need to exist, right? It's like there's a lot of things that would need to exist if things just had not happened throughout history. And I think a lot of history has brought us to this point of needing inclusion. and not walking into any room that looks like you. Because I'll argue that there's, I would love to pose the question back on how many white men walk into the room and worry about being the only white man in the room. And I mean, we could take a moment of silence and probably let a couple pins, pins. It's not even a thought.
Yeah.
To the fact that we think about how many brown people we're going to see when we walk into a room. Like it's literally something I think about when I go to a conference or I'm watching something, or I go to a website and I look at their team page or I look at their About Us page, and I'm always just looking to see. And you know, even I mean, it goes back to watching movies, right? It's like, you know, the whole thing. I remember when Wakanda came out, when it was just this all black and brown cast, and how beautifully amazing it was to finally see that. I mean, that movie represented so much for black and brown culture to see that. But for years, I mean, we're just used to going to movies where we're not represented, and we watch them just like everyone else. We support them to the core. We're fans, right? So it's like all of these things of not seeing that through history, right? We can go on forever about the reasons why representation matter, why diversity and inclusion specifically is so important, and seeing that. Because to your point, I mean, people and young people of color don't even know, to some degree, that being an advisor is a career path, because you don't see that, right? You don't see a lot of people that look like you on this side of the industry that have been successful, that run their own practices, right? You kind of see you know, maybe more space on the corporate end of things, but you have to see it to really believe that that's somewhere that you can attain. So if you're starting at the college level and you're introducing them to this business, or even younger than that, and you're coming in and you're going to talk to them and letting them know that, hey, like, it doesn't have to look a certain way. No industry does. You know, it's such a heavy question.
Yeah.
And even I had an article released not too long ago on wealthmanagement.com, and the comments under it were very interesting. Nothing I didn't necessarily expect to see. But, you know, it's interesting that in 2020, this conversation, this combativeness still exists about creating something that's specifically for Black and brown people, and how there's always a pushback on that, as opposed to really looking inward as to why you yourself have such an issue, you know, seeing things like that, or seeing something that really is meant to empower and be champions. And it's less about, you know, race and Black and brown advisors are better than other advisors, right? It's like you kind of miss the entire point of why these platforms exist.
Let's talk about now what Chip is doing to help the next generation, the current advisor, the current, you know, woman, person of color that's coming in or already is in the industry. What is Chip doing to help?
Yeah, it's really about providing that visibility, that voice that I feel like does not exist. So it's also about creating that sense of community upliftment and support within the CHIP professionals that are on our platform, and really building that bridge to the consumer. Because as professionals of color, as professionals in this industry as general, you know, there's a lot that we need to fix within the industry and how we're talking to certain demographics. And we know that with the demographics that we tend to work with. I mean, my practice, I work with, you know, any and anyone, you know, those that look like me and those that didn't. And we had great relationships. But those that did look like me had this sort of hesitation, you know, from the industry itself, how they've been marketed to, how they've been kind of talked to and received within the industry as it relates to wealth management, investment, and things like that. And it's about building that bridge and creating that space so that people really know that there is a financial professional for everyone, right? For everyone, no matter where you are. And I think that now that professionals have the ability to come on this platform and really adopt that mindset, and they have that mindset of really wanting to not just be successful and continue to grow their practices by finding more consumers that want to work with them, but also that impact of what they want to bring to the next generation in the industry. So as we continue to grow and provide that sense of community, and it's not just community of the professionals, but it's community of those who want to come into the industry, right? So maybe they're not necessarily licensed yet, but when we roll out our community next year, they'll be able to join in and build that network. So it's not like you have to come in blind and not know anyone. You'll meet a couple people at different companies. You'll be able to have those conversations and get those insights. As a college person coming in, it's important to build those relationships now, not when you graduate or in your senior year. It's about coming into the community a lot earlier so that you see those individuals, right? You want to go into finance. It doesn't have to be corporate finance. There are a lot of careers within advisory, as a CFP, the list goes on, as a tax professional, accountant. And we want to make sure that they see that, and they're not just seeing it, but they're also making the connections to possibly get that internship or take that next step or start that CFP program, and us being able to provide that resource for them to do that. There's so many different avenues that we're going to explore and continue to roll out going into next year. So I'm really excited about just the evolution of finally having this place, and also having the voice of Black and Brown advisors really stand out through a lot of different content and things that we'll have coming into 2021 and beyond.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So is there any sort of preview you can give us into what we can expect from CHIP in 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, expect a lot of content, from our professionals, a lot of content from our team internally. I had two series that we had. So I was doing a YouTube series that I plan to roll back out. It was called the Included Series, that I'm thinking about rolling into a podcast as well. So be on the lookout for that. But that series was really about talking to just everyday people that weren't in the financial industry, but they talked about their journeys within finance and how that related to their life, how early on decisions have kind of impacted where they are now, and how they've been able to grow into really understanding wealth, what it looks like to them, and then how they feel included within the financial industry as a whole. And those have been really great conversations. So we're looking to have more of those. We also have our Represented series, where we have these educational series from the professionals who are on our platform, where they come on, they talk about different subject matter, things that are current, and we'll be doing a lot more of that going on, in addition to different writing and different content. So just expect a lot of growth, a lot of impact work I'm really excited about, and just a lot of change in the industry. I think where we are right now, CHIP is going to really, be the part of the story, right? We're all driving down this path together, and I think that's the most important thing, is the people that come on, the support that we're getting, the feedback that we're getting has been great. So it's just, those thank yous push us forward into how we'll change just the color of wealth, we're hoping.
That's awesome. And so what are you hoping to see change in the industry? What are your hopes for financial services as we kind of pull back the curtain on the future? What are you hoping to see?
Just more seats in executive leadership. I really want to go to team pages and see more than one person of color, more than one Black and Brown and Latinx person sitting in those seats, and not just sitting in those seats as being advisors, but being partners, being managing directors or partners or whatever the title is in that CEO space or starting their own RIAs. I think a lot of that is going to happen as well as we continue to build out. So I just want to see more individuals, more of a reaching down into HBCUs and really pulling out a lot of those students and building those programs and building those relationships and creating that strong pipeline, so that they're seeing you, they're seeing the visibility of not just your logo, but also coming out with something, whether it's a designation, whether it's a onboarding to start studying for their licensing, to just, having that mentor and that guidance, just the overall onboarding process at some companies where you're bringing Black and Brown professionals in. Maybe there's some sort of grace that's given, even though some can be very, very successful. So I'm not, again, saying that everyone comes from the same type of network or not having a network. But if they don't, help them to do that, help them to establish that, understand that there might be more time that they need to meet those goals, so that they're not leaving your firms, because leaving is not going to help anyone, right? That's not the change that we want in the industry.
What's the one piece of advice you would give to a woman or person of color who is kind of struggling, feeling alone? We talked about earlier, like that kind of feeling of abandonment, like you onboarded me, you did all this recruiting to get, me on board, and now I'm alone. I feel very alone. I feel like I'm very isolated. What do you say to those people? What do you say to the people who are considering leaving the industry because of this feeling of isolation or abandonment, or feeling like there's no way up the ladder? What would be if you could think of one thing that you would tell these people to motivate them or to reconsider, what would you tell them?
I feel like I'm talking to myself, right? It's like there's been so many instances where I've tried to leave, but you never do. And I think it's just, just remembering why you got into the business, and leaning on that as much as you can sometimes. And, a lot of that will kind of get you through those days where you feel very isolated. It's no different than when you're a founder in kind of the startup space and you have those tough days, and you need to remember the impact that you're going to make, whether or not you can see it now or you can see it later. And that's really what I had to remind myself of the days where, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I just want to leave the industry and just kind of be done with it. It tends to pull you back in, and it's usually not the industry itself or the company. It's usually just a person that you come across, and it might be a client that you meet that just says something to you. And it could be as simple as like a thank you for just explaining something to them. But really lean into those moments and know that you're not alone. And for nothing else, CHIP exists now. There's a lot of other organizations that exist. And seek them out. Just reach out to someone and let them know that, hey, you don't have to do this by yourself anymore. And we're here, and we're here for you, even in those moments that you feel like, no one's paying attention to you. Just stay in, because you're needed. You are absolutely needed.
That's wonderful. No, that's beautiful. And you're right. We need everyone. So don't leave, stay in, keep fighting. We need you. We need you to break through the glass ceilings and break through the barriers so that, you can be the example for the next person entering our industry. So if someone wants to reach out to you or your team over at CHIP, what's the best way to make contact?
Absolutely. The best way is you can connect to us through email at info@chipprofessionals.com. Go to chipprofessionals.com, our main website. If you're a financial professional and you want to apply to be on our site, you can just fill out our application, and we'll get you everything you need from there. And if you're looking for a financial professional, definitely go to chipprofessionals.com. Connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at CHIP Professionals, and we really look forward to seeing you there.
That's amazing. Thank you, Dana, so much. I hope you guys now understand why Dana is one of our phenomenal women of 2021. I cannot thank you enough for joining me and having this really very open and just blunt conversation. I think sometimes, people avoid saying what needs to be said, and I appreciate you being so open and giving us this time to share with you and learn more about you and your business and the great work that you're doing. So thank you again. We'll also be linking to CHIP through our website on our Phenomenal Women tab. So check us out. And again, thank you again so much. I appreciate it. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. It's important work that you're doing. So thank you. And yes, these conversations aren't the easiest ones, but they're nice.